All right, recording has started, and this is the December 6th, 2023 SIG Developer Experience meeting. We got a couple things to talk through today as we're picking up momentum on the 1.15 milestone. So let's just quickly review what the priorities are in the 1.15 cycle. We talked about it more in depth last time, but let's just quickly review those. And then we'll get into some discussions around direction and where we're going with stuff. Yep, so good news here is that like the theme of authoring time validation, design time validation stuff, that has not changed at all, but we still want to deliver a good experience around that. And the set of issues that we have for our top features, the general theme of those is still the theme. That's still the priorities, nothing shifting around there. We're executing on all of them, or most of them at least. So just for a refresher for everybody, especially if you're watching the recording later here, the top issue here is around delivering validation when you are building your platform and writing your compositions. So you're using beta render and you want to be able to have some sort of validation that the shape of those objects are valid. They're according to their schema. So that's the top issue that has the most impact for developer experience within this milestone and our biggest deliverable for sure. Other than that, still a priority to help out the scaffolding effort to be able to remove some of the manual boilerplate updating stuff, and be able to configure those so that the automation of a init and scaffold gives you a personalized repo from the very beginning. We want to teach the package manager, we want to teach Trace about concepts from the package manager, like packages and package revisions and all that jazz, so people can more easily troubleshoot, installing and upgrading packages and they're unhealthy and all that jazz. We also want to make sure that folks have some automation and tooling and support for migrating to newer Crossplane APIs and I guess newer APIs and functionality that Steven's working on. And then we also want to have some insight, basic insight. We're not, there's only so much we can really go into this in one milestone, but being able to show some insight into the health and metrics and everything of a control plane. So all those, none of those change in terms of what the priorities are. So let's dive into some of the agenda topics where we talk a little bit more about our early design thinking and our approaches that we're going to take on some of these. All right, Lovro, you added yourself to the agenda first, my friends. So you want to catch us up on some of the thinking you're doing for the scaffolding configuration stuff?
Yeah, you can open the issue and you can check it out. Actually, I wanted to... What? Where did I comment? Did I comment on the wrong issue? Let me just check.
Maybe. Let's see, maybe we can find it.
All right.
You commented on issue number 4941. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Wait, what is the difference between the...
Yeah,
those... Do we have two issues?
I thought this was the issue that was in the features. Yeah, it's 1.4.
Okay, well, let's
maybe I put the wrong link. Yeah, I put the wrong link. That's the issue.
Okay.
This is the one from the roadmap. Okay, I actually wanted to show something, but I was traveling and I forgot about rush hour, and I barely made it to the meeting. So I just quickly. Yeah, it's horrible. Thank God we work from home, and we don't have to do this often. Basically, I can just go through it. We discussed this, I think, on Monday with Philippe and Ezgi, and hopefully I managed to catch what we were talking about. I also was playing around a bit with it, checking some other solutions, and in the end, I thought the best is actually to go with a simple solution. We just like doing something what Helm does. So if a repository has a node text file in the root, we will try to, first we'll do something more complicated. We'll try to use it as a Go template file and try to replace the name with the provider name that we're given. If it's just a text file, it won't do anything. It will just print it out, like telling the user, okay, now you have this repo, now you do this. And if you have some templating around name, which could be just to make it a bit nicer, or maybe change some commands if you want to have some commands in your notes.txt file, it would do it. So I already am working on this, just like as a POC. I want to show it, but it's not ready. And then as a second step, it would be also similarly if a repository has some like an init script, we could tell the users, hey, do you want to run this script to initialize the repository further, or to automatically do this stuff from that is in notes.txt. Doesn't matter. Depends on what the from the authors of the repo, what they would like to put in. So like we are moving responsibility from this tool to try to figure out between different things, because we have functions, providers, configurations, what exactly to do, how to automate it and make it nice, to the templates themselves to have the solution for making it better, initializing it better, and we will just provide the tool that automatically does it. So yeah, this is my current idea. Ask Philippe also, please comment if I got something wrong from our conversation, and others just let me know what you think.
Yeah, so Lovro, so do you have a good understanding then of what all would get updated by this name value that the user could supply in a notes file?
Yeah, where you put like this, those curly braces dot name, this will get changed to name, the name of the initialized, how we call it, the name that you provide in the X package beta init name.
Oh, like the argument that you're passing in there.
Yeah.
That's right. There already is a name like argument, but it's currently ignored, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's ignored.
Okay, so then that name would get taken and then flow down into get injected into via templating into the repo. But so does that mean that the template repo itself then does that, what's committed to Git that has like mustache templates there for name is, or like how does that work?
So I'm sure if I got you. So the template that we are cloning should have a notes.txt file which has this, this format of name inside, and if it is, it will get changed into the name that was given as an argument. If not, if it's just a text file, we can just print the text file. Doesn't matter. So people can choose different levels of complexity in their templates.
This is just like in Helm, it's just a welcome message. It's not templating the whole repository. It's just welcome.
Yeah,
your new repo is set up. Now you need to do this, and that, which might be scripts, might be an example installation of a custom resource for an operator, whatever you want. It's just a welcome message. The hack init script Lovro mentions in the comment is the next step. So if we want to actually automate stuff also on other files, we need some proper hook to templates can specify, and we can run stuff. But at the end of the day, the difference will be, do we want to ask people to run something and then they run that if they want to or they don't, or do we want to run it automatically? If the script, we could have a script and just in the notes.txt just mention run this script with this argument, and everything is going to be automatically updated. So you have a little bit more control. I think we should be a little bit more careful with running whatever we download into user's machine. So it might be a good,
that's a good point.
compromise.
I mean, you can just ask, do you want to run it now, or say just click N and we won't run it. But yeah, but this is as a next step. So I now understand what you meant. Like, we won't template the whole repo. I was checking the solution, but it doesn't make sense, because if you make all the repos as templates, they won't work anymore as differently than from using the CLI. So they would only work by using the CLI. If you use, for example, just GitHub to make a repository from the templates, then you'll have something ugly. So
oh, interesting.
This seems as a better solution.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So yeah, so we're trying to cover both scenarios of someone using the X package init CLI functionality, but also the scenario of somebody like going to the template repo and cloning it or forking it or whatever through GitHub, right? And not using the CLI. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think the main thing that I would hope that we do, like, and I guess that's what the second step is here. As a second step, we introduce a third step that then executes a fourth step. So I think that's what you're talking about there. But as part of the experience for this issue here, I would love to have as part, like, the solution here that automatically does go and update everything in the repo that you needed to personalize it for your own thing. Because I that's in the docs right now, and we firsthand during the Contrib Fest session in Chicago at KubeCon, I saw a number of people run it, have problems with that. The documentation says, okay, go and update, change the name of the input thing, change the namespace, change this package import, like all that sort of stuff. And obviously some people got it, but some people were like, wait, this doesn't work. I need help with this. And they couldn't update all the right places manually. So something that, and I guess that's this step here, something that does go and update all those imports and the names of stuff and whatever, so it's personalized to what your type, I think is important to get done in this epic.
Yeah, so we're making it like from the CLI side to be minimal. It will run the script, but the script has to be on the template side because it's personalized to this template. So yeah, so from our side, we'll make the mechanism around it, and then we'll have to add to the known templates at least. These scripts and nodes. And for if people will want to add their own, because we have an option to use their own templates, they can use the same mechanism as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, that makes total sense. If you there's a part that's implemented in the CLI. There's a part that's, like the scripting or the, replacements or whatever that are in each of the template repos. That's all good if they're split up that way. Just the end result of the user not having to manually go and change names of stuff is definitely helpful, so that people don't run into issues with that. Cool. Any questions on that, Lovro? Is what I'm describing here, like, not crazy, right?
No. This is the end goal, is to make it easier for the user, right?
Cool. So perfect. Yeah, exactly.
We're on the same page.
Cool, man. And you're already working on this too? This is like a focus right now?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yes.
Awesome, dude. I hope you find time within your commuting.
This is a one-time thing. Thank God.
Cool, man. All right, sweet. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I just briefly look at this. I don't understand why there's two issues still, so I'm going to follow up on that and figure out how that happened. Just looking at them briefly, I don't know why there's two issues.
I think one was about adding the other one that Lovro didn't comment was about adding configurations. So the support for the and creating a template for configurations, and the other one was about hooks.
Right. That's what this is. Got it.
I put the wrong link. I was checking
must be the same thing in it. Got it. Cool. Then I will close that and not have to follow up on that later on. All right, sweet. So steps here. Awesome. All right, next topic. So Ezgi, you started to look into what it would take to move Crossplane CLI to its own repo. Do you want to kind of, we were talking about that on the side too. Do you want to kind of catch us up for the recording here on where we're at with that?
Sure, but just before I start, I want to mention that I'm on the same page as you, Jared, because after start doing some POC on the render command, I noticed that we are going to increase our dependencies to kernel libraries, and it will just double our work if you want to first make it public and then use it in the Crossplane CLI part. So this will be more work as opposed to what I suggested. But my initial thoughts was were if we move the Crossplane CLI into a separate repository, we will be able to release and add new functionalities to CLI in a faster manner. But it turned out that Crossplane CLI is depending on some internal libraries used inside Crossplane, like the composite definitions or some composition-related functionalities, or even a mechanism from converting an XRD to CRD. So these are all internal in Crossplane, and we are not sure whether we want to make them public or not at this point. So instead of publishing everything, I think we all can decide that we are gonna continue in this manner until we extend Crossplane CLI's functionalities. We find out which internal libraries we are depending on, and then go through each library and discuss whether we have a maturity level or not.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, Ezgi. And I think that the initial legwork that you've done to kind of analyze what the surface area of dependencies is, that'll be really useful to be able to reuse that effort, like either your searches or your script, like queries or whatever you're doing to figure out that surface area. That'll be useful to use again after the end of this milestone and see like what the surface area looks like then, and be able to analyze it as a whole at that point too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, before that, I was thinking like we are depending to some versioning, and there were some useful common libraries like name generator, etc. But it turned out that it's more than that, and it would be, yeah, it is a lot messier than I imagined. So yeah, I think we can wait.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks a lot for looking into that. It's good to know that, because that was, we knew that we were using some Crossplane internal stuff, but how deep does it go and how much bigger is it going to get? Now we're starting to see that. So that's super useful to know that. Do we have fancy drop downs in this doc? No, we don't have them here. Jean hasn't been in this doc too much yet, obviously. Well, maybe we figure that out later. Great. All right. Great update, Ezgi. Thank you so much. Cool. Next one. So I know Ezgi and Lover, you all have been looking into and thinking about how we could do validation of like during render, doing validation locally, like on the client side, and not having to have the complexity of an external control plane and managing it and all that jazz. are you all at a point where you can kind of share your initial thinking, like what you've been talking about so far, what you've been brainstorming about?
I can give an update if you're okay, guys. Cool. So we
Yeah,
have,
go ahead.
thanks. We have discussed with Laura and Philippe about it, and our initial idea and simplest idea is making all the validation offline as a starting point. So what I mean by offline is we won't have any control plane, we won't have any internet access, let's say, and we are asking the user to provide the schema, both for the composite resource, so the XRD, and the provider schema as well. So this was our initial kind of step to go start with. We can definitely improve that approach. We can just get a providers.yaml file like functions. We can download the image and extract the CRDs from them. Let's say it will be more user-friendly API, I guess. Today I have, no, not today, maybe yesterday, I have also started some kind of a POC, whether we can do it or not using the Kubernetes API servers validation library. I have managed to validate the composites based on XRD in an offline manner. The one thing I don't like is how that crossplane beta render command is evolving, let's say, because we are gonna add some flags to it. We already have lots of subcommands, and it's getting a little bit annoying to write all these file names in a specific order and then adding some flags like dash dash validate or dash dash XRD kind of stuff. So I can also show you the current API, current command, but I don't like that approach. I'm not sure how we can improve it. We might just get a folder name maybe and assume that all the files are in the specific name, like xr.yaml, composition.yaml, xrd.yaml, etc., etc. And we can just look for that files and load them. It will be a simpler approach. Or, I mean, we will just use the defaults and we can override those defaults with a flag maybe, because I still cannot remember whether we are gonna write the XR name first or the composition name, file name first. So this is kind of annoying. Without flags, it's like you just need to remember all these orders. So I don't know. I'm gonna add my thoughts into the issue. I will also add some suggestions there, but if you guys have some suggestions, I'm also open to hear.
Yeah, I definitely get that, Eski, as well. I can validate your feelings on that of, it's like the way it initially shipped is an explicit ordering of them. And it's, yeah, like when you start adding more things on top of that, then that kind of becomes more of a cognitive burden for people to remember. So I like your thinking about, how to streamline that. Like maybe it is a directory, maybe it's, like specific names or like well-known names, something like that. Like that direction seems wise to kind of scope down the, amount of things that somebody has to provide to the tool. But yeah, this makes sense, the direction. And one thing Bassam was mentioning to me yesterday, because I got a chance to catch up with him, is that he likes the scenario of like thinking about this from a development perspective of you're designing a new API or, a new composition or whatever, you're trying to get it working at the very beginning, like that early cycle there. You have like a lot of times you haven't published any of these APIs anywhere, like you haven't built them into a package, you haven't pushed them, somewhere to a control plane, you haven't done any of that, right? You're just on your little laptop and that's all you're doing right there. So kind of thinking about this from a perspective of supporting that scenario as a starting point seems quite wise actually for a big surface area of our like use cases that this will be most helpful for. So I like where this is going. I think this makes a lot of sense to me too.
Cool. Thank you.
Lovro, did you have more to add on that too, man, or Philippe?
No, I mostly agree with what Eski was saying. I didn't see what her POC yet, but I can imagine that the command starts to look bad after adding more stuff.
Nice.
So I guess we will brainstorm on this further.
Cool. Sounds good. And then I took some scratch notes on the side from my conversation with Bassam yesterday. So I will add those to the issue just to kind of capture everything that he was giving guidance on. So we have that available for all of us to look at and on the public issue as well too. You only get so much time with Bassam, so you got to maximize it and make sure that it's captured well. Okay, cool. Okay, cool update. Yes, so for the next agenda item, I started looking at and just doing some really early POC stuff for how we could teach trace to understand package types as well. So I don't have much that I've gone in depth on here at all, but I did just want to kind of share what it is so far to kind of get some validation from you all. So I was like trying to think about what's important to show to a user if like what's the scenario we're solving for here. So I've seen many times amongst the community of people like they have a package, it's unhealthy. Like that's kind of like the core scenario I'm looking at. And what does that mean? What do you have to do to figure that out? So like the biggest leap that people, it's not intuitive and you won't know about it unless you were looking at the docs, unless somebody's telling you how to do it, right? Is like you're exposed to the package that you installed. That's what you did at the action you took as a user is to install a package. That's the thing and then making that logical leap to the revisions for it and the status and conditions on those revisions, like that's a jump that you have to make right now. So I was thinking that the output, like just like we use trace right now to give it like a regular resource, like a claim or a composite resource or something like that, you would do trace and then you would give it like a provider or function object or configuration object, whatever, like the top level package that you installed. And then in a tree format, it would show, like the revisions for them, and then like the latest conditions, like the latest event on them, just like we do for a tree of resources to show, what's the latest event that would most likely show you, what's wrong with it or what the problem is. But then I was also thinking that dependencies are super important here too, where you can install one thing and like you've actually like you install a configuration and like the platform reference AWS one is what I'm thinking. You install one configuration and it's actually like 6 sub configurations, each with like dependencies on their own providers as well. So you get this tree of dependencies that's I don't know, that's like 20 packages big, and they all have to be healthy for this thing to work. So I was thinking about, in our tree view for package types, it starts at the root of the package that the user cares about. And then it shows not only the revisions, so like provider or function revisions that are important to that package. Honestly, I'd probably just show the active revision as well by default. Maybe you could like say like pass a flag to say show inactive ones as well if you care about those, but streamline it, the default experience to only show active revisions. But then in addition to those revisions in the tree, to also have dependencies of this package and their revisions underneath them. So it's like a whole tree of all the dependencies for your package and the active revisions for them as well, and their conditions, their status, that sort of stuff. So it's a kind of a tree view like that. Does that make sense so far, or am I drawing a crazy diagram in my head right now that doesn't make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Okay, excellent. If I'm well
on the showing only the active revisions, given that the kind of the scope is for debugging purposes, maybe it would make sense to right away implement some logic in case there is no active revision, show even the inactive ones show directly the inactive ones in case there is no active revision. That could be an helpful thing to do in case of debugging scenarios. But other than that, I totally agree on the whole approach.
Yep, that's a good point, Philippe. Lovro?
Yeah, I also think you're in a good way. I just wanted to make something sure. You were saying you will keep the same format of displaying the trace command with this like levels, right? Because
Yeah,
you
like
said
a
the point
similar
was something like,
visualization. Yeah, like a hierarchical tree thing that's essentially, I'm trying to see how much we can reuse of the existing logic, to have a consistent experience across whatever object type that you're passing in. So it's not radically different because it still is, it's a graph, right? It's still a tree graph sort of thing. So it probably makes sense to have the same shape. But it could run into issues where, wait, this is a different thing we're looking at here and it needs to be done differently. But I'm hoping to, yes, show the same shape as we already do for resources. Yeah.
Thanks.
And then one thing I wanted to ask you all, my first realization with this was that, oh my God, I am super rusty with like the Crossplane code base. Woo! It was slow going of like, how do you get whatever object? I was like, oh, it was slow. But do you all know already if there's a good way to look up the dependencies of a package? I was looking at the status and schema of all the provider objects, and at least like a package object doesn't, the runtime package object doesn't explicitly list its dependencies. That information may only be in the lock object, perhaps, but I don't know if that's true, or I just haven't found it yet.
Even with the flag, I think we can prevent Crossplane to write the dependencies in the lock. So
yeah, probably you're gonna have to.
Yeah.
Sorry, go.
And I just say that lock resource might not be enough to check the dependencies.
Yeah, probably my initial understanding was that you'll probably have to get resources by label or like list resources by label according to the parent. So whereas in the between composite resource claim and composite resource and composed resources, we have a parent to children list of references. So a list of references in the parent to all the children. In this case, I don't think we have that. So you will need to replicate the same selection logic through listing. Most probably, that's what I would expect. But yeah, hope maybe not, but 90% I think that's going to be the case.
Cool. Okay, cool. That's good guidance then. So thanks for doing that, or thanks for sharing that, guys. Root package dependencies and
we do, however, have in the status of revisions an object ref feed, which is going to point to CRDs and validating webhook and stuff. I don't know if you want to also show that. Maybe
maybe
not,
optionally.
maybe behind a flag.
Not by default, so it doesn't clutter it up of like a provider has like 50 of those things and it kind of makes it big. Yeah, but by the kind of similar, I think of that similar to how we have an optional flag for including connection secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now. Yep, exactly. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Optional flag for displaying resources. Cool. All right, nice. And Piotr, so yeah, so that's everything I've got on that. Just initial thinking, making sure that I'm not crazy. Which for this particular scope of issue here, I may not be crazy. There may be scope beyond that. We're not talking about that in this meeting. So next issue then we can talk about is Piotr, you have joined us, my friend. You've been doing some early design thinking for the top command. We've basically been going through the meeting here, dude, and just sharing all of our early thoughts on all the main features that we're working on for this milestone. So yeah, catch us up on where you are then with top thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry for delay. I got a one-on-one with somebody that typically gets canceled, but this one didn't, so I'm late. Right. So as you might have seen, I already have like a very simple, naive example of how you could pass through kubectl top pods and just scope them to Crossplane pods. So that works, but that really doesn't bring that much value. You could do the same with kubectl and just filter by label. So there's a few things I've been thinking about. So first, maybe I like starting from the end. So what is the UX gonna be, right? So there is, we need to find a middle ground between somebody simply opening Prometheus web UI or Grafana and needing something different that command line can give. So how, metrics could be presented, and that's what I've spent a lot of thinking. So there are projects, you might seen some of them like Sampler or other projects that produce like graph-like output to terminal. So it's almost like very simplistic view of Prometheus metrics in a graphical way. So that's one option you could do. Another, maybe just like a list of various metrics and have a latest values or averages, because without really seeing the graph, it's not that helpful for metrics to know what's happening. So some of the metrics that Stefan proposed, they seen in isolation as a single number, they don't really tell you much. You would want to see them on the time scale, somehow on the time axis. So I am trying to land on the output of the command that would make sense from the UX point of view. So that's kind of the first, idea. I'll put together some mock designs that I'm thinking could be helpful, and from there, some of them will be like too much, maybe, like they are too close to web UI, so just open web UI. Some of them might be too simplistic, so I'm hoping like to land somewhere in the middle. Another point specifically for me, I subscribe to what Jared just said earlier. I am not familiar with Crossplane codebase as you are, so it's all for me a lot of discovery there. So for example, I spend a lot of time understanding how do you programmatically in Go use a Prometheus client or something to pull the metrics rather than go through the cluster. So I've seen a lot of PRs that have been merged in the past and discussions around it. So there's some learning curve. I'm also not a Prometheus expert. Contrary to popular belief, all platform people should be Prometheus experts. I am not. I just know Prometheus kind of okay, like everybody. But I've never spent, a lot of time with it. So I'm not like a Prometheus god, or anything like that. So there's quite a lot of discovery that's happening on my part here. And if you know of any, documentation or processes that are already there, it would be great for me to just drop the link in the channel. I'll go and read it and see what's happening. So as for the metrics themselves, I think what Stefan said is a very good starting point to see, what's happening. Also, the top metrics for provider pods makes a lot of sense too, to see what's happening, like utilization wise, exactly how the command line does it right now. There is a PR, quite big one, the last comment, reconcile add crossplane resource drift second metric that kind of shows how to add the metric. I spent some time today trying to pull the metrics from Crossplane runtime, but it just didn't work. So I don't know what was wrong there. So it's kind of specific metrics to Crossplane runtime. I'm not sure if you are familiar with a blog from Dan. Jared, you probably know what I'm talking about. This was a famous blog from our dear friend Dan that he talks about how to scrape the metrics and kind of expose them. Also gives details in links to code and stuff like that. So yeah, so just to sum it up real quick, what I want to put in the document is primarily from the user point of view, how the command could look like, mock it a little bit, see where we land. And my biggest question from the implementation point of view is like, how does it work? Like, how do I get a Prometheus something and transform it into something? And, you know, from like Go point of view. So those will be the two things I'm hoping end of this week I will like put up a Notion doc, mostly with the, you know, the mocked output of a command where we can all discuss and criticize my PowerPoint skills.
Yeah, so nice, Piotr. I think you're doing a lot of good early thinking on this, and I appreciate your methodical approach to it. And I can kind of validate a lot of what you're saying there. Like one thing that was definitely resonated with me was that, you know, the user experience here has to have some value, right? Because, you know, you can spit out some numbers. You can say, you know, like Crossplane top, and then it spits out a number. It's like, well, what does that number mean? Is that high? Is that low? Is it healthy? What does this mean? So some context and understanding what these numbers are is going to be really, really important. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see, you know, like what you're thinking about, like what the design for that could be, or what's the best way to expose that. Yeah, we can kind of get aligned on how best to you know, surface this stuff to the users. And then one thing I was definitely thinking too, man, is that we have like there's definitely going to be phases to this, right? This is not we get it done in one milestone and this is the final experience forever, right? This is certainly going to have a number of phases. And so, you know, like I think you're on the right track for what those phases would be, because right now we do have some metrics in Crossplane, right? They're mostly the you know, controller runtime metrics that you get from being built on that library. They aren't like higher level Crossplane, you know, specific concepts and stuff. But a big problem that people have now is that kind of like what you mentioned, is that you kind of need to go read Dan's blog post to be able to get access to those numbers, right? So that's a big blocker right now, where people don't even know where to get started, right? So something is like it would not be a failure in this milestone if all we were able to do was something as simple as, you know, providing a command for people to get access to this stuff without going and reading a blog post and, you know, configuring all these different things and setting stuff up. Like if a streamlined way to just get people access to those numbers or those values is a great place to start. And then, as you said, you know, there's like, I don't know how much thinking or how much progress is going to be made in the current milestone around higher level metrics and, you know, defining cross-plane level concepts and, you know, derived or, you know, aggregated or whatever higher level stuff. I don't know how much progress is going to be made on that in this milestone. So maybe we can drive that forward. But if we don't, I think it's still an okay starting point here to just make these metrics that we do have accessible to people. Is probably the biggest blocker right now, I bet. But I think you're on the right track for all this stuff, and like the thinking all makes sense to me that you're doing so far, dude.
Well, that's very helpful what you just said, like last, that, you know, having those Crossplane runtime metrics, and just because I had to like go through a lot of hoops, you know.
Exactly.
But port forward pod to Prometheus, there's some kind of patches that you have to do and stuff like that. So doing it all in code and saying, there you go, maybe even like saying, you know, if you have Prometheus running on your cluster, just kind of opening the web UI for the beginning and kind of giving you some, easier setup that could be helpful as well.
That's not a failure. If if we just straight line connect it for people, if we don't build our own user experience or output this stuff in a rich format, and like we just get people to the Prometheus dashboard where they can view it themselves, like on a web browser, whatever, like that's removing the hoops you have to jump through and connecting it more directly. So,
and I still didn't get it right. I still didn't. It still didn't work today. So that's a good point. So if Felipe, you want to say something?
If I got it correctly, the end goal is still to have like a Prometheus instance running at the end of the day somewhere, correctly scraping everything, and then top will just connect to that instance, that Prometheus instance, and show stuff, or directly, or will it be like direct connections to providers and Crossplane and stuff, and show some metrics without an actual running Prometheus instance? Because if it's just connecting to Prometheus, what about a Grafana dashboard? For Cloud Native PG, the basic demo is like to deploy Prometheus operator, deploy Cloud Native PG, deploy a cluster, and install the dashboard, and you have this wow effect of the Grafana dashboard showing up. So was that considered? Because if it's just a dashboard connecting to a Prometheus instance already running, a Grafana dashboard would be probably a more user-friendly and nice tool to allow people to see stuff and graphs and drill down on their things.
So how can you show the metrics without Prometheus?
You could connect, Prometheus is just hitting some endpoints on various pods, so on Crossplane and on providers and stuff. So you could bypass, avoid having a Prometheus instance and just hit the endpoint. If the information is available is already enough, you could still show something. Obviously, you miss on the historical data. You have just one point in time, but man, it depends on what metrics you are looking at. If the metric you want to have is a number of reconciliation loops in the last hour, that's already an aggregated metric. So one hit is enough to have the information you need to show in your dashboard or text-based dashboard if you want to.
So I think the metrics that Stefan is suggesting is like time to change provision, time to detect where the resource was reconciled last time to reconcile, exceeding time to reconcile, reconciliation rate, and failure rate.
Yeah,
so
these are all
first kind of
these are all means and percentiles, so they are usually already kind of averaged metrics, so you don't really need a Prometheus instance to be doing the averaging over time. You just you can the issue is that if the instance is up for 2 minutes and your window is 5 minutes, obviously you're not going to show a meaningful number there. But as soon as you reach the length of the window length, one hit could be enough.
So if I buy you a beer, will you show me how to do this tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
I wanna because I don't understand how it's done. That's my problem, right? Like I think from what you're saying, I like it because you have these steps. You can say, oh, you know what? We can actually do something without Prometheus, without you needing to set up anything, and we can give you some numbers. That's just first step. Maybe it's enough for you to assess something on a high level. You're happy with it. And if it's not, then the next step would be, okay, then you have to open Prometheus, Grafana, and start really getting deeper.
Yeah.
But it involves more steps. So if you can show me how it's done, then I can understand how how to do this programmatically, then I think it's really, really good, first step.
Sure.
What do you think,
Yeah.
guys?
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. Like having a good understanding here of like what, because my instincts here are that in this short milestone with all the holidays and all that stuff, we're gonna have to be very realistic about what we can actually ship, and especially with like folks' times that is not 100% focused on this, right? So understanding what capabilities do we have with our existing setup, our existing infrastructure, and how can we, shortcut or like streamline things for the user to get some value out of it without building a lot more infrastructure or supporting things around it is probably going to be wise for this milestone. So like connecting with Philippe and understanding how it works is going to be a shortcut to that probably.
All right. Awesome. So thank you, Philippe. I'll just ping you tomorrow and send you a beer. Just give me your address. German beers are awesome,
I'm muted. So that's everything on the agenda. So I think, yeah, we got through a lot today on, basically everything, all the fronts that we're working on right now, and, getting alignment together and sharing ideas and stuff like that. So this is a super useful meeting, I think, for us to stay connected here. And so I want to continue to acknowledge and appreciate all you folks who are in, European time zones for being able to make this and have a synchronization point together, because it's really, really helpful, I think. So cool. All right. Well, then we'll be talking async then for the next 2 weeks. All right. See y'all.
Yeah.
Yep.